All right, folks, welcome to another episode of the Counter Media Podcast, where we're going to tell you what the media won't and what the government doesn't want you to hear. I want to welcome everybody. First of all, I want to welcome my co-host, my good friend Chris from Down Under. He's down there chasing down all kinds of kangaroos as we speak. And of course, we want to say hi to everybody over in the comments that we got already. We got Jason, TG sponsor, Metal Seer, John Rollins, Wyatt Darrell, Pat G, Robert Cochran, Harold Shepard, G Rock 216, and Minute Con. Good to see you, buddy. And anybody else, if you're just now tuning in, make sure you say hi over in the comments. We'll try to recognize you. And of course, all throughout this show, definitely we'll kind of save it toward the end as well. But we're definitely going to be reading your comments and taking your questions as we go along. And of course, like, subscribe. If you're watching this in the future, again, make sure you start tuning in where we have it live. We're doing this live now. I think we've decided on 8 p.m. Mondays and Thursdays, right, Chris? That's what we agreed upon.
Yeah, that works out a little bit better for the old Australian time. Give me a little bit more time to prepare and get ready for you Americans.
Absolutely. American Schweitzer, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Thomas Teak, and of course our Lost Boys over on Rumble. I will try. It is easier for me to check Rumble when I have a co-host and I'm not doing everything on my own. And today, I'll be honest with you, I've been super busy the last couple of days. I just picked up my mom from the airport, and we're going to be going to SHOT Show. So I'll be live streaming from SHOT Show next week. We'll also be putting out a lot of content, all the new stuff during SHOT Show. I will coordinate with Chris. I'm going to try to continue to do these shows as well. We'll see. We'll see how SHOT Show's a little crazy there in Vegas, and we'll see what the schedule allows us to do. And I'll coordinate with the whole team, the Counter Media Podcast team, and we'll see what we can make happen. But Chris, why don't you introduce our topics tonight, since you did about 98% of the work on this, and let's go from there.
Yeah, so today we're looking at what's going on in Romania. There was an election where Calin Georgescu, I think that's how you pronounce his name, he won the first round with like 23% more than anyone else. But before they got to the second round, we were sort of a runoff between him and I guess the second place lady, I think. The Romanian court has intervened, citing Russian interference to prop up this
Russian interference.
It's everywhere.
It's the number one threat. Russian interference is everywhere.
They are just all over the world, even in Romania. So I've queued up a bunch of videos sort of explaining a bunch of that. We've got some interviews with...
Well, let me ask you this, Chris. Why is that relevant? Why do we people here in America, and really, I mean, that's the only country that matters. I don't care what Australians think. But why do we people here in America, why should we care about this? What does this matter?
Well, I think there's two main reasons. One is the similarities to American politics with Russian interference. And I think somewhere in these interviews, Georgescu sort of mentions the similarities to the Trump election in 2016, where, we were told this was Russian interference and there was the Comey investigations of Russian collusion and all this kind of stuff. It sort of dragged on for years, sort of trying to discredit the Trump presidency, basically saying that Trump was elected because Russia wanted him to be elected, and Russia bought a bunch of Facebook ads and that swayed the election basically, and a few other things.
I mean,
it's a little bit ridiculous.
I wish the United States was as competent as Russia apparently is. I mean, they can get a lot done with so much less than we have.
Yeah, a few $1,000s worth of Facebook ads.
It's
can take over America.
It's amazing that they defeated Hillary single-handedly. Had nothing to do with Trump and his policies, and going against the swamp and kind of doing business as usual, the way we've been failing for the last 20 plus years, really going back further than that. But definitely America has gotten really good at sucking at the economy, at war, at geopolitical politics. I mean, we've gotten really good at just sucking at everything, and we have more capabilities, more power, more money, and yet we can get, and apparently Russia is outdoing us left and right with a whole lot less. But take over, Chris. Go from there. Tell us what's up.
Yeah, and it seems there's more similarities with Trump too, with this Georgescu. He's sort of like outside of the box a little bit, and he's against the status quo. So people, yeah, they want to change. Like Trump was a real change candidate. It seems people want something different. He seems to be tapping into a similar kind of populist vibe. So I might just put on our first video I got queued up here. This is the first video just after he won the first round of the election. And then there's a second clip at the end of it talking about concerns. This is before they overturned the election, but just we'll show his victory plus the immediate concerns that the media straight away were talking about, and then we'll come back and add on after that.
Sounds good.
Known as...
Sorry, bear with me.
Cruz didn't even film him casting his vote. Only his team did. But he is known on TikTok. The independent far-right candidate who captured 23% of the vote went viral with his messages calling for an end to aid for Ukraine and skepticism about Romania's NATO membership, viewed by more than 3 million people.
The economic insecurity imposed on the Romanian people for 35 years turned into insecurity for the political parties. The Romanian people cried peace, and they cried out loud.
Also surprised by the result is Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu. He's shaped Romanian politics for more than 3 decades. Polls predicted a comfortable win for the leftist candidate who ran on a promise of stability. But he's now out of the race. Second place went to Elena Lasconi, former journalist and head of the centre-right opposition party. She's advocating for systemic reforms, the rule of law and environmental sustainability. But it's mounting inflation and the war in neighbouring Ukraine that worry Romanians. Most admit they know little about Georgescu, but say the winner will have their work cut out. Russia says he's also unknown to them, but analysts say any possible interference will be investigated.
Our authorities will be looking more closely at the structure of the vote, in case there were any kind of artificial waves being created via TikTok, and of course if there is any financing involved, because such an online revolution, if I can call it, is rarely a coincidence.
The next round will take place on December the 8th. Charlie Angela, Al Jazeera.
2 candidates that were eliminated in the first.
So already they're looking at waves on TikTok.
Well, yeah. What is their overall argument? Like I don't understand what they're saying. They're saying this artificial wave. Like they're putting out content on TikTok that is just so compelling, or are they saying there's actual somehow cheating going on through TikTok? Because that doesn't sound like what they're saying. They're saying it sounds like, hey, you know what? Your media campaign is more effective than mine, and that's not fair. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
That seems to be really what's happened. At this point of what we showed here, they haven't finalised their case. So we'll come to that a little bit later. But it's essentially that a lot of TikTok accounts were created, and they basically try and say that Russia created a whole lot of TikTok accounts to help boost videos on TikTok that would support this guy. But we'll sort of come to that a little bit later. But this is just early on, before they even put that theory forward. That guy before straight away was talking about TikTok waves. I think there's a little bit more concern here, and then we'll come into the specific allegations a little bit later.
They were what we would call prepping the objective prior to. They were laying the groundwork so that they could bitch and moan after the fact and claim that there was some sort of fraud taking place.
Yeah, it seems like straight away they were putting out the message that, there's something a bit suspicious with his TikTok activity. And
Gotcha.
Then a little while later, the former president released some declassified documents showing this campaign, which we'll show them in a sec. But yeah, it seems they are sort of prepping the idea that the election was illegitimate.
First round of Romanian presidential elections filed requests to the country's constitutional court to annul the results on the grounds of irregularities, breach of voting rules and unlawful campaigning. The requests come after a far-right candidate, Calin Georgescu, took a surprise lead in the election, and now...
So I think one of the competitors that didn't do too well filed some kind of challenge at some point.
Okay.
Now going to the second round to become the president. Mostly campaigning on social media platforms like TikTok, Georgescu became suddenly popular and a subject of concern because of his anti-EU and anti-NATO messages. Meanwhile, protests against the result of the first round continue on the third evening. 2,000 opponents of Georgescu gathered in Victoria Square, while his supporters came together at the University Square. People also took to the streets.
So you had joint protests there. You had more sort of pro-EU protests that were unhappy that this Georgescu was winning. Plus, you had his supporters there. I think I read elsewhere that he likened these protests against him to the Euromaidan, which is the protests in Ukraine that were protesting for closer, to sign the EU association agreement, and that's sort of what led to the coup and all the war that broke out. But Georgescu sort of said, "Be careful of the protests against me." I think they've since died down, but there were some protests that we just saw there against him winning from the more pro-EU wing, I suppose, within. But he also had his supporters out there as well.
With the information that I've seen and so far that you presented, there doesn't seem to be any real evidence that there was any fraud taking place. I mean, for all intents and purposes, Georgescu was the legal and rightful winner of this election, right?
Yeah, it does seem like that. As I said, they will throw a little bit more, of a claim a little bit, but it's essentially just saying that Russia created a lot of TikTok accounts.
I know I'm simplifying that a lot, and I'm sure they have a much more complicated argument against his election success. But I'm just, again, I haven't heard anyone say there's actual fraud taking place. They just don't feel like he won fairly, I guess.
Yeah, and even though they try to hint that it's sort of Russia, even the sort of their leader or current/former leader that's supposed to be gone, but he's still hanging on, he basically sort of said, and you'll see a little bit later, that he can't say it's Russia behind it because the campaign was that subtle and that sophisticated, we can't actually prove that it was Russia.
Gotcha.
But they still sort of assume that it is, but it's just, there's no proof, and they take that to mean that's proof that it was so sophisticated and so subtle that we can't find any proof that Russia did it, which is a little bit convoluted, I suppose.
Well, yeah. Well, look, I think we're almost on the other side of the argument here in the United States, because, I mean, the fact of the matter is, what I believe when it comes to election fraud is, number one, we have no real election security in place. I think election fraud is extremely easy to pull off here in the United States and extremely hard to prove. But I don't even think that they're talking about election fraud in the sense of, hey, we have illegitimate votes being put in here. They're basically just saying, hey, there was an influence campaign that was highly effective that influenced these people, these idiots, to vote a way that they shouldn't have. That, and again, I don't even know what the claim is.
Yeah, that's basically it. There was an influence campaign on TikTok. They say it might have something to do with Russia. But yeah, essentially there was information out there, and that caused the Romanian people to vote a certain way. Yeah. So they're not saying there were any fake votes or anything like that. It's just the people voted the wrong way because they were misinformed by Russian propaganda on TikTok, I suppose. But
it's basically the same argument that Hillary had in 2016.
Yeah. Russia bought Facebook ads from their sort of troll bot army factories or whatever, and the rest is history.
In different locations.
Nu vrem un lider legionar, un lider fascist, cineva care să ne aducă războiul la graniță.
Doresc ca România să nu se întoarcă în urmă cu 35 de ani. Îmi doresc să nu fie acesta ultimul protest și ultimul moment în care pot să ies în stradă.
Dumneavoastră de la cei de la presa privată, i-ați răstălmăcit vorbele în fel și chip.
Yeah, it's just an interesting point there. It says, you, the press, I'm guessing this is a Georgescu fan, saying to the press, you have twisted all his words. So you look him up and it talks about his controversies. He said something anti-vaccine or a bunch of various statements. But even you've got a familiar scene here of, a protester confronting the press for being so dishonest. So you're twisting his words. He never said he was anti-EU. He never said he was anti-NATO. He only calls for peace.
The Constitutional Court will be evaluating both requests on Thursday and investigate the claims.
Okay, so that's... There was, at one point... Because there are a few different things here. It's hard to kind of keep track of. At first, there was a claim of some kind of something going wrong with the election, but the court actually upheld it. So this is December. So they voted on November 24. On December 2, a court had a look at the election and they validated it. So they've since changed it, obviously, but at first the court validated the election, and then like a week later they went back and said the election was illegitimate. But at first, and this is what this video is here, at first they said, no, we've had a look at the election and it's valid, so we're going to go ahead with the second round. This is December 2. They've since, as we will see, gone back on this. But it's just interesting. I just found that out this just before, like an hour ago, that at first the court upheld the election, the first round. I'll put it on two times. But yeah, the judges, they decided to reject as unfounded the challenge of an opponent. She was trying to say that it was illegitimate or something. But the court has unanimously decided to confirm this first round of voting on November 24. The second round's coming up. It was supposed to be on December 8th, I think it says. Yep. So basically, like, we're confirming the first round. Second round is going ahead between Georgescu and his sort of runner-up in sort of the second round.
And it looks like the way that they do their system, they can have multiple candidates, and then whoever has the plurality, the most votes in general, wins. Is that what I'm gathering from the way they do it?
I guess it must sort of narrow it down. Maybe the two leaders, they then go to a runoff round in the second round. I'm not 100% sure either.
Because didn't they have like 3 people running in this election that they've now reversed?
Yeah, at least quite a few more. And they were going to have the second round, which, as we can see here, they did confirm the first round. Second round was set to go ahead, but then what happened? Let's have a little look. I've got some slides here. Oh, there's just some background before I get there. We'll probably come back to this, but another reason why this is important, besides it relating to America with the Russian collusion and stuff like that, is this whole thing with NATO and the risk of war with Russia. Because, without going all the way into the Ukraine war, a big concern there of Russia was the NATO expansion and trying to bring Ukraine into NATO. Romania is already in NATO, and they do a lot of exercises here. NATO sort of brags about how they're sort of pushing things east, which is, Russia sees as a provocation. And, they've got a massive base in Romania.
Romania is part
making
of
it bigger.
But they're not part of the EU currently. Is that what I'm understanding?
I think they're part of both. There's usually an overlap, not one to one, but generally if they're in NATO, they should be in the EU. I guess Turkey's an exception. There might be, but generally, I'd have to look it up. But I would assume Romania's in the EU as well.
I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, so they became part of the EU January 1st, 2007.
All right. That's probably around the same time they joined NATO. I'm not 100% sure, but I imagine they probably went hand in hand. The point is they've got a NATO base there already, and NATO plans to expand it. So this is from March last year. They're already working on making it. And the largest NATO military base in Europe is going to be in Romania, very close to Ukraine and Russia. That's a bit of background context. Another reason why this is important, because this Georgescu, he wants to stay out of Ukraine. He doesn't want to fund the Ukraine war anymore. He just wants to stay out of it. He says he's only interested in Romania, not Ukraine. Yeah. So this NATO stuff doesn't seem to go with his agenda, and that means his agenda doesn't go with the system's agenda, and it's probably a good part of the reason why they've overturned the election. But, so at first there was a challenge, but the court upheld the first round. And then this is just a sort of an article from the EU. I'll read a bit of this and then we'll come back to the details. Okay, so you basically have this European think tank of some kind. It's funded by the European Union. I'll show you. Yeah, it's this report here. We'll come back to it. But basically, the European Digital Media Observatory identified information manipulation tactics, including unlabeled political content, particularly on TikTok. So that's something they talk about. If you run ads, you're supposed to label that you're a presidential candidate, and there's certain, you got to cross the T's, and it's just some sort of details which maybe weren't followed in certain TikTok ads. It's not the biggest thing in the world, but maybe they weren't labeled properly as a political candidate or something. Nothing really to do with Russia, but that's another claim they talk about. On the 27th of November, Romania's National Audiovisual Council asked the European Commission to probe the role of TikTok in the first round of the presidential elections. On the 29th of November, the Commission requested TikTok to explain its management of the risks related to information manipulation. Okay, and I'll come back to the rest of that. But yeah, so there's this EU report that came out. So Georgescu, he's got nearly 23% of the vote here. And a lot of, I can't remember who's who, but I think 35% of the vote went to, oh no, probably more. At least 30, maybe 40% of the vote went to general right-wing nationalist parties, of which Georgescu is counted as one. I think there's George Simeon as another. So it seemed like a populist right-wing nationalist sort of. They did very well in these elections that they just overthrew.
I wonder why they don't do primaries like we do.
I'm not sure. I don't really know the whole Romanian political system or why they do it the way they do it exactly. So yeah, just an EU report. They don't really say anything besides saying that Georgescu is known for rhetoric aligned with Russia, which is basically anyone that says we shouldn't fund the Ukraine war anymore. That's rhetoric aligned with Russia, basically. But there's no mention in here of actual Russia funding anything. So they did this report basically sort of saying that there was, something a bit dodgy with TikTok, but nothing too specific. Oh, another thing here, they say he basically said he didn't spend any money on advertising or something, and he just had videos on TikTok. And they're a bit suspicious of that, I suppose. But it's possible that he just put out videos, maybe other people funded them or spread them around, but he personally didn't. I'm not exactly sure.
Well, this also sounds very familiar to the campaigns down in Brazil as well.
Oh yeah, I'm not as familiar.
Yeah, a lot of the I'll try to think of that candidate's name in a second, but a lot of the same things that they were talking about. That basically, it was unfair that they were using social media so effectively. The winner originally didn't win. He won, but he spent almost $0 on actual traditional campaign methods. And, again, they were all crying a foul. And ultimately, the U.S. forced the presidential candidate out. It was absolutely, this is the Biden administration as well. So what nonsense.
Yeah. So, yeah, in the last few days, he sort of had a lot of growth. That's, not completely out of the ordinary. So they've got him on he says the second one here. They got his metrics. Not as much as this Simeon, who came third or something. He's got obviously a lot more reach and stuff. But yeah, anti-establishment candidates are doing well. See, I think in the background of this, you have anti-establishment sort of for the people candidates that go against the mainstream, and the system doesn't really want that. They want the old school.
Yeah,
just your two parties with your traditional fundraising. If you got a bit of a so-called radical populist using TikTok and people just seeing the appeal of him, they're a bit concerned about that, and they got to crack down on TikTok and various social media to stop this kind of thing happening again. I think so. The elites can, maintain their grip of power and make sure that democracy won't get a vote that they don't want. Yeah, so that report went out. Yeah, and we sort of mentioned Romania asked the EU to look into it. We have here. Yeah, so they just asked them to look into it. And then the EU then sent some requests to TikTok to explain how they manage, sort of election manipulation kind of stuff. And then this came out. So when we had the court validating the election, I think that was December 2. On December 4, the Romanian government released this declassified document. And this is like a 6-page thing. I don't think I've gone through all of it. But basically, this is their so-called proof, as close as they come, of some kind of irregularities in the election. So they're basically saying, not too long before the election, he was down low. He basically shot up really quickly, largely due to TikTok. Yeah, so here they're trying to say, there were 25,000 accounts on the TikTok platform, which became very active 2 weeks before the election day. None of this is backed up with any proof. They're sort of just asserting all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And I guess we have to sort of take their word for it. And even with what they're saying, I don't think they... From what I remember, I think they hint that these were Russian, but they don't really have any proof of that. But it just seems like there are a lot of accounts that were active in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, what they're really bitching about is the fact that whether it was Russia or whether it was somebody else, it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that we, an open society is going to have a free exchange of information. And what we had here was either Georgescu himself or people that wanted him to win used a highly effective, non-traditional campaign to convince people to vote for him. And that's what happened. I don't understand it even goes back to the same thing that we dealt with in 2016, where, Hillary was saying it was Russian influence that switched the election. Like, what are you saying that they actually did? I don't understand. I mean, we had Trump out campaigning her like 5-1 when it comes to appearances, rallies. He had a ton of small dollar donations. Whatever you want to say, the fact of the matter is Trump had a huge, successful campaign in 2016, and I think he had a winning campaign in 2020 as well. But I digress. But it never. Just like here, the accusations that they were making and the influence that they suggest never made sense to me. Like I don't know. They're not even pointing to anything where it's like actual misinformation. Like they're lying. If anything, what they're accusing Georgescu of doing, just like the same thing that Hillary accused Trump's campaign of doing, is the real misinformation. They're saying that this guy is tied to Russia without any evidence whatsoever, and that's the real misinformation in the horrible use of media that's being done.
Yeah, and see, there's no proof that it has anything to do with Russia, but let's say, for argument's sake, Russia was putting out ads or propping up certain TikTok accounts that boosted this guy. Most governments do stuff like that, and 100%. There's propaganda everywhere.
And America's the worst.
Yeah, and so that's sort of part of it. Every time someone's going to a vote, they are the sum of all everything they've heard, all kinds of propaganda from all over the place, and that's sort of a part of democracy too. People decide what they think is true, and they go to the ballot box and they vote accordingly. But they want to step in and say, well, no, you were influenced by the wrong kind of influence, so therefore your votes, we're going to take your agency away as a Romanian voter, and we're just going to cancel the election. And that's if it's true that Russia did all this, which I don't think they did. But
yeah, I mean, let's face it. We've been handpicking Australian prime ministers since like the 80s. So
yeah. Well, apparently you guys had something to do with. We had Gough Whitlam. He was sort of.
I never heard of
the Queen sort of stepped in, but yeah, apparently you guys had your hands all over that one as well. But yeah, the point is, America will interfere a little bit more than just Facebook ads or TikTok ads. You guys have a bit more 100%. Up your sleeve than that.
Look at Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Ukraine, they didn't want to vote. They decided against voting for the EU association agreement. Next thing you know, there's a coup. There's a new government which does support the EU agreement that the old government didn't want.
An overt American-led coup. Like, we're not even pretending that we, it was 100%.
Victoria Nuland was literally on the ground with the protesters, and they were violent. They were shooting at police. They were setting police on fire. Yeah, with a bag of, she was literally feeding the protesters. Yep. There's a line there. She goes, "Hi, we're from America. Would you like some bread?" This is to the people trying to overthrow the government in Ukraine anyway. But yeah, they'll still try and say, "Oh, we didn't have anything to do with that. That was just the people rising up, demanding to join the EU." But yeah, so I think Russia doesn't really hold a candle to that kind of stuff. Even though I think they're catching up in Africa. I haven't really caught up. Apparently in Africa there's a bunch of coups going on, and Russia's behind all those ones. But that's another story. I haven't really looked into that one. But in terms of this one, it's just basic TikTok stuff. And if you look here, like 1.4 up the top, it's saying there are a bunch of videos that falsely displayed like Romanian symbols by the look of it. So it's like, TikTok used the false logo of the anti-terrorist brigade. Yeah, it falsely represents institutions of the Romanian state. So I'm guessing there was a pro-Georgescu video out there that might have had an emblem of the Romanian government on there. And that's made it into their sort of their intelligence document for why they need to overturn the election. It's just not even really anything important. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just 6 pages, and there's nothing. It's all just TikTok. There's a bunch of accounts on TikTok. I think they mentioned one account in particular, which I'll come back to. But yeah, no evidence, basically. So this is one of the accounts they listed. Just a small account. One video here, you can see, where is it? Sort of on the bottom right there. Second row down the end, 2.5 million views. That's a big one, but the rest are all pretty small. But yeah, so in their official thing, they list this account. It has one video that got 2.5 million views. And so that's what we cancel the election over, is it? But anyway, so yeah, so on December 2, we showed earlier. Where are we? We showed earlier, yeah, they approved the election on December 2. December 4, we had all of this. This come out, basically sort of hinting that it was Russia without any proof. And then 2 days after that, December 6, this court, I'm guessing maybe it's a different court within Romania, I'm not 100% sure, but it just says, and you gotta love the language, in order to ensure the correctness and legality of the electoral process, the court exercised its attribution provided by Article 146, letter F of the Constitution and unanimously decided the following. It cancels the entire electoral process regarding the election of the President of Romania. It's a basic court decision we've overturned. Even though we just had that other court that said it was all good, 2 days later, or a couple of days later, after this sort of document came out, alleging some kind of Russian shadiness of some kind, this is the court here. There they are. That's their decision. Elections are overturned. And so they're going to talk about redoing it later. I think they've since decided it's going to be next March. And I saw a comment somewhere, someone said they're hoping the hype for Georgescu will die down before then and they can hopefully get a different result. But so as soon as that happened, that was December 6th. So here's the current, should be former, but he's still around, Johannes. Of course, he says cancelling the election, that decision must be respected, he says, for some reason.
And I'm sure he is the opposing party.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I don't think he's running again because I don't think he can. I think he's already run enough.
But he's
he's part of the system.
The Democrat Party, their left-wing party.
Yeah, I imagine because there might be a left and a right wing that might be sort of part of the system, and then some of these ones are sort of right wing outside of the right. I don't know enough about that, but I dare say if he's not part of the left-wing government, he'd be part of the sort of right-wing government that might be just the same, basically. But yeah, from what I imagine, he's part of the system. And I've got a clip of him. We'll see him talking in a sec. But yeah, he says, following the elections, I started receiving notes from intelligence services about some strange things, Johannes said. I'm pretty sure later he says that it was America and Germany started contacting him saying, there's something a bit suspicious about your election. We're not too happy about it. So, because, we just care about democracy so much. We'll just, just advise people to overthrow their elections for the good of humanity.
I mean, the only way they can preserve democracy is completely cancel it sometimes.
Yeah, you have to subvert the democratic will of the people to uphold democracy sometimes.
That's right.
So this is BBC reporting about cancelling the election. Georgescu has condemned the ruling as a coup, and Romania may have to wait months to vote again. It sort of mentions, it's got here, it is not the first Eastern European state to fend off Russia's hybrid war, and the Constitutional Court has ruled that intelligence revelations of Russian meddling are sufficiently serious to put the presidential vote on hold. Now, I imagine, notice how in the BBC article, it sort of slips in there that this is part of Russia's hybrid war. So it's basically affirming that this is true without even looking into it.
And just a completely declarative statement without even providing a shred of evidence whatsoever.
Yeah. It's just yet another example of Russia's hybrid war.
I think like the globalists in our world here, in the EU, the United States of the West, the globalists of the West, we'll just say it like that, have gotten together and they've formulated a narrative that they're all sticking by.
Yeah. And I think there were talks of similar things happening in Moldova and Georgia, where Russia was interfering in previous elections there. I haven't looked into that. I imagine it'd probably be the same kind of thing. You might have some candidates in that country that maybe don't want to go to war with Russia or Ukraine or whatever. And if it's the same as this and with Trump, that's probably all it takes for them to talk about Russian interference. But as I said, I haven't looked into Moldova and Georgia, just that people have compared this to that. And when I say people, I mean like EU people, globalist people, BBC. Yes,
everyone George Soros funds.
Yeah. I think I've got it coming up. Georgescu, he basically says, if I win, all George Soros organizations will be banned in Romania.
Oh, good.
And he basically said, since the fall of, I guess, the Soviet Union, Soros moved in. And this is a common thing with Ukraine too. I've got it in one of my Ukraine videos. Soros basically says when he went to, as soon as, the fall of the Soviet Union, he set up all these so-called civil, I forget what he calls them, NGOs, some kind of civil groups.
Yeah.
And he basically said in Ukraine they've been operating ever since. And this Georgescu says the same thing about Romania. But he says if he wins, he'll get rid of them all. So, they're talking about 25,000 TikTok accounts becoming active 2 weeks before the first round. So they say, and even if it's true, it could, just more people could be getting active to support someone that they like, perhaps. But, there's no real sort of proof of any of their claims. And then, all right, so then it's time to load up a video of this previous leader, this Iohannis. So once again, he's speaking Romanian, and I've just got these subtitles, so I've sort of just sped it up. I might sort of read over what he's saying. So we discussed the tools that we need. So he's just speaking of the EU. This is before he even addresses his cancelling the election. But I think this is December, can't remember exactly, but this is a few days after he cancelled, the Romanian court cancelled the election. But he starts talking about, I've been speaking to the EU, and they said, we're talking about the measures we have to combat Russian interference in general. In all processes, elections and government legislations and policy stuff. So there's a broad theme of we have to worry about Russia interfering in elections plus passing legislation. Okay, and regarding Ukraine, so this is just a backstory of where the status quo is for Romanian support for Ukraine. At all levels, regarding Ukraine's defense and energy needs, we'll keep supporting them. There's a lot of discussion about peace negotiations. I think it's good to be aware that peace negotiations, basically, they have to run them through Ukraine. Ukraine must be involved. They're basically saying we'll continue supporting Ukraine, and if there's any solution, Ukraine must have a say. I guess they're worried about Trump and Russia just basically saying to Ukraine, this is going to be the story. I think, he's talking about.
I think Ukraine can continue to do whatever they want, but just do it without our funding and our material aid support, which means they're freaking done.
Yeah, and when they talk about it's up to Ukraine, it's up to Ukraine to do what they want. It's not up to Ukraine whether America keeps sending them weapons, which is sort of what they try and slip in there. They're like, oh, well, let's make sure Ukraine's part of these negotiations. Well, they have no leverage. What's beggars can't be choosers. They'll take whatever they can get. If they can't get it, they'll have to wrap up the war.
Yeah.
But he's talking about him cancelling his election now. But still talking broadly, the threat of Russian interference in elections. It's not only a threat to Romania, but to democracies and European values. Okay, it was recognised as talking about his election being so-called a bit dodgy. It was recognised by American partners in Germany that Romania had an enormous problem, and it coped, I guess, by cancelling the election. The reaction by cancelling the election was immediate, strong, and correct. And that's why I'm confident in Romania's ability to remain stable, solid, trusted member of the EU. Don't worry, we won't vote for someone who doesn't want to go along with the plan. We will intervene if we have to.
Like anybody can give shit about what Romania votes for. Like, shut up. Chances are, I'm curious to know what the U.S. gives Romania in aid. U.S. aid to Romania. Let's see what that comes out to be. U.S. government is providing up to $60 million in FMF grant funding toward, let's see, $920 million in foreign aid that we announced in September 25th, 2024. And guess what, Romania? You'll do once Trump gets in and we decide to start pulling the strings with what aid we give you and what aid we don't, and whatever other economic hardships or benefits that we can give you, sticks or carrots, you're going to do whatever the United States tells you to do. So let's just quit playing dumb. But continue.
Sorry. There's a question about cancelling the election, and this reporter's trying to say, oh, well, if you should have done something earlier, if it was dodgy, you should have cancelled it. You know, maybe you don't have enough mechanisms to cancel the interference before the vote happens or something. And so he's asking about the next elections, which I think are supposed to be in May or March. I forget exactly which one of the M months. He's asking, how do we ensure that the same situation of so-called Russian interference doesn't happen again? And he's asked who was responsible. He basically says, I don't hold anyone responsible because the intervention was so subtle and so complex that practically most of what happened was found after the elections. We observed some issues, but the laws weren't enough to stop it in time, I guess. Yeah, a campaign who ran an excessive campaign who claims that it cost zero. No one believes it, but that's what he declared on social networks. Social media campaigns are common, but those networks have the obligation to mark candidates when there are elections with a tag. When they are no longer allowed to campaign, the network stops any campaign. There was some talk of like they were supposed to stop the ads a day or two before the election. Maybe that's some kind of rule. I know different countries have different rules about when ads can be run or something. And maybe TikTok didn't like ban ads outside the certain time zone or something trivial like that.
Sure.
Yeah, the network ignored, I guess, Romania's requests to stop ads for Georgescu, I'm assuming. It's a serious violation of the law. But it's in China, so, so just more complaining about TikTok, basically. Yeah, we can't constrain TikTok if we want to stop the so-called interference or violations. Yeah, foreign interference was found later. We had significant support from our strategic partners who helped the Romanian entities to find what happened. So, yeah, it would have been America or Germany or the EU saying, aha, here's all the excuses that you can use to cancel that election. Yeah, any guarantee there will be no more interference. I don't start from the premise that what happened the first time will be repeated. That's what I think. I'm convinced that everyone will be much more attentive, and I believe that the next round of elections will take place under conditions of better transparency. So yeah, that's the old guy explaining himself, I suppose. And then I've got an interview with that Georgescu on News.
Romania, a country that borders Ukraine to the south. Just like Donald Trump, Calin Georgescu, another populist candidate, came out of nowhere and won the country's presidential election in November, until the results of that election were annulled by the country's high court 5 days later, after claims that Russian TikTok campaigns swayed the election in Georgescu's favor. Basically, the courts stole it from Georgescu because they claim that Russia stole it for him. That didn't happen. A man similar to Trump in many ways, someone who is not beholden to NATO or the European Union and just wants his country, Romania, to succeed. He is accused of being pro-Russian. And just this week, a Romanian appeals court upheld that shocking decision. Calin Georgescu is joining us now. Calin, it is great to have you on.
Thank you.
Here's the man himself.
So take us through, it's our pleasure, sir. Take us through what happened in November. You won the first round of Romania's presidential election. You were on your way to becoming the next president of Romania. Can you tell us why the high court there annulled the election results? Why did they take this from you?
Because first of all, they cannot realize exactly in a situation of President Trump that this is possible, that the people can support a person out of the box, to say like that. And simply on Friday, the 6th December, the vote was started outside of Romania. That's mean in Europe, also in New Zealand, in Australia. And in the afternoon of Friday, simply they canceled the vote. Simply like that. The Constitutional Court of Romania, they said that there are suspicious things regarding the relationship with Russia or any other influence with Russia, which of course doesn't exist, and they canceled the vote. Moreover, in 1 week ago, the former president, Iohannis, who actually, based on the Constitution, his last day as president was December the 22nd. In an interview in Brussels, the journalist asked him, do you have any proofs regarding the situation for the cancellation of the vote? And he said simply like that we have no proofs, we have just suspicions.
It's unbelievable. Let me so the accusations, I just want everybody in America to understand this, are, and we've heard this all before here, that Russia tried to interfere in your election. I'm wondering if the High Court is offering any real proof and how you are going about fighting this now. Because right now I'm talking to somebody who should be, for all intents, the next president of Romania.
Yeah, doesn't exist any proof. We had the last court in December the 30th, and also the president of the court asked the governmental institutions if you have any proof on that, and they said simply that we have not proofs. So the problem is that the Constitutional Court simply they kill the democracy and kill the Constitution. And we are concerned because this is not only for Romania, it could be a precedent for any country in the world, including the United States, because they want to push this situation and could be a precedent, besides that they want to push Romania in the war with the situation in Ukraine.
Let me ask you about that.
My position always was, I am looking for peace. I am looking definitely, exactly as President Trump said, to stop urgently the war in Ukraine.
Can I ask you, have you spoken,
my
sir?
Statement,
have you spoken with President Trump?
No.
Okay.
No. We have just a relationship with a team, but I didn't talk with him.
Okay. I want to, you've been very vocal about stopping grain shipments to Ukraine from Romania. Again, Romania right to the south of Ukraine. How much do you think positions like this impacted what the High Court did to you in November and then on December 30th? And do you think that NATO and maybe the European Union played a role in stealing your win from you?
Very good question. Yeah, the point is that that my statement to say I am just for peace and I'm president of peace, they put them in alarm, because simply they are looking for the war, and I am in the position to stop the war. And we have very clear involvement, of particularly from European Union, which is very, very interested to push the war,
right,
including NATO, which in fact tried to change his position as defense organization in offensive organization. And of course, I said very clear that my position for my country is to stop the war and to have peace. And definitely, the word peace made them crazy, in a sense that they're desperate, in a sense, to have the war.
Whenever we talk about peace in Ukraine here in the West, we're criticized as well. So it's not just in Romania, where you are a country, again, that shares a border with Ukraine. Would you describe yourself as anti-Ukrainian or just Romania first?
Romania first.
Okay.
And in the moment when, very good question, in the moment when so many, let's say, international social media and other television, they asked me what you are doing with Ukraine. I said, I shall stop immediately any contribution for Ukraine.
Just about 30 seconds, sir. How concerned are you that they might try to put you in jail? They tried to do it to Donald Trump here in the United States. How concerned are
Yeah.
you?
I can tell you, I hear you when you said that it's a similar situation. It's not similar, it's equal. Just they changed Trump with Georgescu. This is absolutely the same things, the same accusation, the same stuff. Is nothing new. It's just the same position. Just as I said, they changed Trump with Georgescu. This is all.
Yeah. Sir, good luck to you.
So I've got a few more things. But I think that's a key point there. And, I don't know all the ins and outs of exactly why this is happening. But that line where he keeps saying, I'm for peace, I won't have any more contributions to Ukraine. I think that's why he's a real threat. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the reason they're trying to overturn the election, because the system, they've invested a lot of time and effort into the war in Ukraine. They probably want it to keep going. They're probably worried about what Trump's going to do, because he's sort of spoken about ending that war pretty quickly. But I think that's a common theme that he says, and I think he's probably right. He's for peace. He doesn't want the Ukraine war to continue. And especially with, they got the plans for the NATO base. I dare say that this is a threat to the system. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's why they're doing all this.
Yeah, and the parallels of what we did in Brazil, not only did we use not only did the Biden administration use the same playbook that we use here in the United States to beat Trump, we did the same thing to Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro came to power. I know he served one term, but that was one of the things that he did. He spent very little money. He used social media very effectively. He won the popular vote. He ran as an anti-establishment candidate, and he won. And then on the re-election, the U.S. and specifically the Biden administration did not support Bolsonaro for running for president, and definitely supported his candidate. And suddenly, and I'll share my screen right here. Because this again, the parallels of this are just absolutely crazy of what's going on with this. Basically they came in and they committed fraud during the election, and Bolsonaro and by the way, the U.S. government was involved in this fraud. I was just looking at it. What was this? And then
it doesn't surprise me, by the way. I'm not too familiar, but
and then here's the crazy thing. Then Bolsonaro comes to the United States after this election. Of course, he's still complaining and leveling allegations against a fraudulent election. And then what happened was there was a quote unquote insurrection while he was in the United States, and now they're trying to frame him for that. Let me share the screen right here. There's like so many of the Chris's screens down here. But yeah, so he wasn't even there. They didn't have anything that directly related to him as far as a supposed insurrection. But yet that's what they charged him with. And now he's going back and he's actually facing charges based on that. But I mean, the parallels on both of these cases and what the United States is doing and how we're using the exact same playbook they tried to use in 2016 is absolutely crazy. And then here we go. Although Bolsonaro was not in Brazil as protesters demanded a military takeover, many analysts blame his rhetoric over the years for inspiring his supporters to attack. Bolsonaro is directly responsible for what we saw, says Ribeiro, because he has 4 years pitted his supporters against democratic institutions, which is another key phrase we constantly hear here in the United States, and sown distrust in the electoral system. No, they committed fraud by a lot there in Brazil. And again, it's absolutely crazy what's going on with this. Here's the other one I'll share real quick. Share this tab instead. Former Brazilian president, I'm assuming that is Jair Bolsonaro, has been banned from office until 2030 for abuse of power after he made unfounded claims about Brazil's voting system ahead of last year's election. And again, it's the same thing. But the United States basically did an electoral coup. He talks about their voting systems, the computers that they were using, And there is a lot of good evidence that our government was involved in potentially hacking those systems and determining an outcome that was never meant to be. And that's what we continue to see. And they use the exact same playbook about a nonsensical protest that they turned into a coup, and now they're charging him for it when he never did anything or said anything that inspired, that they could directly tie to inspiring this coup or inciting any sort of violence.
Yeah, it's a bit different, but it kind of reminds me of January 6th. I think there's a few people in jail that didn't even go inside the Capitol. I don't know if they're getting done for some kind of rhetoric, something or other. Your words, not allowed to really speak.
Well,
I'm
hoping with the new administration, once we get Cash Patel in there in the FBI, that they release more of the footage. We're starting to see little tidbits of footage from January 6th that we've never seen before. And absolutely, anybody that committed violence, they should get, whoever committed violence in that demonstration, in that protest, because that's what it was, should get whatever, the George Floyd rioters got doing the equivalent actions. That's what I think on that. And then all the people that did absolutely zero when it came to any sort of violence or any sort of crazy act, if they're the ones that came in later, when we have Capitol Police opening up and escorting people in, when there is absolutely no indication to anybody that, hey, this is closed or anything like that, those people should just, number one, I hope Trump gives them a full pardon, because that's what they deserve.
Yeah, me too. Trump was asked about that at a presser, and of course the media's all upset, like, oh, you're not going to pardon any violent people, are you? And you're not going to do this, and they're very concerned about the pardons. But Trump, to his credit, he reminds them that the only person that died that day, I know the media tries to talk about the police officers, but I don't think they were killed on the day by the protesters.
Nobody was killed because of violence other than Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah, and that's what Trump said. The only person that died was Ashley Babbitt. She should never have been killed. That was just outrageous, that whole thing. And it always makes me sick when I find people on the internet just talking trash about her and she got what she deserved and all these kind of comments, because she was an unarmed, small woman just shot by this cop that was not, had no fear of his life. No warning, I don't think, from what I saw from the footage. There's no, hey, stop or nothing, just quietly hiding off to the side and just shot her in the neck.
I think, honestly, he had an accidental discharge. I really do. I think he was, look, there were people trying to break through that door. And legally, he absolutely has the legal right to use lethal force in that instance. I think that was bad judgment. I don't think that he should have shot Ashley Babbitt. And I really do. I think he had a negligent discharge, ended up killing her, and then tried to play it off as it was. That's what my belief is on that whole situation. So,
yeah, quite possible.
You guys can take that for what it is. I have no evidence to back that up. That's just what I think happened, because it just doesn't make sense that he shot her. Because there were people close to him that were men that were greater threats to him. I think he has no business wearing the uniform, and I think he just accidentally pulled the trigger. That's what I believe.
Because they had plenty of cops on the other side. I think they sort of walked away just beforehand, but there were plenty of cops there on that side of it. Like the idea that she needed to be, like a serious threat, that she needed to be killed. Anyway.
Well, here's what I'll tell you. If we go by what we saw all through, 2020, everything that we saw in George Floyd riots, there were people that were protesting during the George Floyd riots right there on the White House. I was watching those in real time, where they set St. John's Church on fire. They were throwing bricks at Capitol Police, at Secret Service police, the uniform police. There was a lot. There was a greater threat of violence there than anything that happened on January 6th. And the fact that I think there was almost no charges brought, I think many of the charges ended up being dropped. And I think there was like 100, I have to look it up, but the number of Capitol Police and Secret Service uniform police that went to the hospital and were seriously injured was through the roof that night. I think it was over 100, but I have to look that up to somebody fact check that for me.
I'm not sure.
That was the night that the Secret Service put Trump in a bunker because they thought they were going to break through the gates of the White House.
Yeah, they definitely blew that so-called insurrection on January 6th to ridiculous proportions. Insurrection. I think Trump said recently it's an insurrection with not a single gun. They didn't bring a single gun, but they're trying to take over the government and do all this kind of stuff with no weapons. And a lot of them were let in, walking between the ropes, all that kind of stuff. But we'll probably keep an eye on that one as Trump takes office. Hopefully he pardons at least a good chunk of them. I've got a few more things with the Georgescu as well, because Elon Musk commented about it. Where are we? Yes, a bit of background. So there's a video going around. I don't know, that's probably too hard to read, but basically it's just an article about the Digital Services Act, and I think this is some kind of EU law to prevent, some kind of propaganda or misinformation on social media, and it compels the social media companies to do various things, and that's the act there. And they've also got this code of practice on disinformation. This is what I think this next guy is talking about. It's sort of been taken to mean that he's talking about, we'll see, because he's sort of talking about that, but then he also says we did it in Romania, so we can do it in Germany. The question is asking about, it's not in the video, but the interviewer lady, she's asking about the influence of Elon Musk, I'm assuming to do with Germany, because he interviewed that AfD leader, he's giving her a lot of support. So I guess the questions are about, Elon Musk is interfering in elections. That's sort of the context of all this. So he sort of responds that we've got these laws. If Elon Musk is doing these things, we can deal with it. But it's the comment at the very end where he basically says, we did it in Romania, we can do it in Germany too if we need. So I think he's the ex-EU commissioner. So I think people are reading a little bit too much into this, including Elon Musk, because the tweet was going around showing this comment here, we did it in Germany. Actually, I should stop myself, because I was going to say people are taking it wrong because he's actually talking about these laws, and those laws can't overturn the election. The Romanian court didn't use these EU laws to turn it around. But at the same time, he did say we did it in Romania. I'm not sure what else he could be referring to besides overthrowing the election. So maybe he just wasn't clear. I'll just play the clip and we'll show Elon Musk's response to it, just a tweet.
Je suis certain que précisément, on va prendre toutes les mesures pour s'assurer qu'il respecte la loi. S'il ne la respecte pas, il y a des amendes. Et si jamais il continue à pas respecter, il y a également dans la loi la possibilité d'interdiction. Donc on est maintenant équipé. Il faut faire appliquer cette loi pour protéger nos démocraties en Europe.
Quand vous dites interdiction, est-ce que ça veut dire qu'il faut entendre que potentiellement il faut aller jusqu'à l'interdiction du réseau X Twitter?
Mais c'est pas il faut. Il y a des lois. Une loi est là. C'est pas la loi de Thierry Breton, même si c'est avec mes équipes qu'on l'a écrite. Elle a été ensuite amendée, votée par notre démoucratie européenne. C'est la loi des parlementaires européens.
Vous comprenez bien, Thierry Breton, et on le sent.
Et on le sent. Il faut donc désormais qu'ils la fassent appliquer. Vous savez, on est dans une période un peu inédite de la démocratie américaine où pendant 100 jours, vous avez le président élu qui monte et qui n'a qu'un seul pouvoir, celui de la parole, et le président sortant qui descend. Pendant ce temps-là, généralement, il y a des règles démocratiques, il y a des règles, je dirais également.
On voit qu'elles ont un peu sauté.
Évidemment.
Bienséance.
Donc on est uniquement dans le poids de la parole. Attendons ce qui va se passer. Et pour l'instant, gardons notre sang-froid et faisons appliquer nos lois en Europe lorsque celles-ci risquent d'être circonvenues et que elles peuvent, et si on les applique pas, conduire effectivement à des interférences. On l'a fait en Roumanie. Il faudra évidemment le faire si c'est nécessaire en Allemagne.
I just want to go on the record and say I hate French.
Yeah, it was a bit of a tough lesson in preparation for this stream to have to watch that and put it in my little video editor and upload it. It's a lot of French I had to endure for this, but yeah, I see what you mean. But yeah, he said at the end there, we did it in Romania and we'll obviously do it in Germany if necessary. This Visegrad 24 account, basically says, former European Commissioner Thierry Breton says the EU has mechanisms to nullify a potential election victory of the AfD. I don't think that's exactly what he said, but it is understandable because while they started talking about these laws just for the EU, he did end with, "We did it in Romania." I'm not exactly sure what he's referring to there, but anyway, he responded. So yeah, Elon Musk says the astounding absurdity of this Terry Breton as tyrant of Europe. But the guy responded, I think coming up. It's hard to really see, but I can read it. He responds, "Oh, tyrant of Europe? Wow. But no, Elon Musk, the EU has no mechanism to nullify any election anywhere in the EU. Not at all what was said in the video below. It related only to the application of the DSA, Digital Services Act, and its moderation obligations. Lost in translation or another fake news." So, yeah, and so Elon Musk responded there, "What happened in Romania, doe?" And he basically said, yeah, it wasn't due to the DSA that I was speaking about. It was due to Russian interference. Can't exactly see, but yeah, that was just that little exchange that he said that, and that sort of went viral. But then back to my little slides. So I prepared a bunch of things this time. Yeah, so they then decided they're going to redo the election on May 4. Yeah, they cancelled the old one. They're going to start all over again. Yeah, May the 4th. There you go. Yeah, just one comment here. He goes, multiple crises, including the COVID pandemic and Russia's war in neighbouring Ukraine, have also sapped support among Romanian voters for the more established centrist parties. So, yeah, the war in Ukraine, I imagine a lot of Romanians are sick of it too. So if a leader says, look, we're going to stop all that, people, surprise, surprise, they vote for it. But the protesters, they're still in the streets protesting the cancelling of the election. So I've got some videos from this as well, but basically just referring to, yeah, just everything we've talked about. The cancel the election, got the new one on May the 4th. People are protesting this one. It says here tens of thousands of protesters, including left-wingers, because this guy's, I guess, on the right. They call them far right for whatever that means, whatever that's worth. So tens of thousands of protesters, including...
You're the far right.
Yeah. But left-wingers also, and those angered by the way the election was cancelled. Hang on. Sorry, I just had something in the way of the screen. Technical difficulties. Yeah, they joined the protest organised by the opposition Hard Right Alliance for Uniting Romanians, Romania's second largest party. I think it's the guy I mentioned before. He came like third or something, but he's another nationalist that did pretty well. Simeon something. But yeah, so there's the protest. We'll show you some video of that now. Where are we? So it's a bit of a mix, left and right. So the other guy, Johannes, he's just hanging on until, I guess, May. But he's supposed to be gone around about now, I think. Yeah, so 2 days before they were supposed to have the second round. That's when they just cancelled the whole thing. And we're hoping to have a do-over. Nothing too violent, nothing too extreme, just I imagine people not happy about the whole cancelling the election business. I think it's saying round 2. Don't skip round 1, let's just go straight to round 2.
Doi s-a blocat, l-a anulat, a început să se voteze în turul 2 și din păcate guvernanții noștri și cu acești conducători tălhari, hoți, o să zic chiar criminali.
I'm not even sure Russia was sort of directly accused, it was sort of hinted at in various ways. So yeah, the court wanted to get rid of the first round and just start all over again.
Well, Russia's been turned into the equivalent of evil spirits or the boogeymen. You know, I mean, they're just responsible for all bad things that happen. And again, look, yeah, exactly. Look at this insurrection. Look at this insurrection. Every one of these people should be sent to the gulag.
Lock them up. Yeah. Yeah, for maybe a year or two, some in solitary confinement with, like, not very good legal processes. That's what I heard for some of the January 6 people. No, they're not getting a fair trial on that. Yeah, so they're not sure whether he can run again. I heard somewhere that he still might face some kind of charges for some kind of dodgy election campaign that he ran. And that's it right there. He opposes Romanian support for Ukraine in the conflict against Russia.
Well, that's
you say something like that, that's all it takes.
Look at all those patriots ready to freaking take down these protesters. I mean, insurrectionists.
A little bit more, I think. It's probably just more of the same. It's just funny. We're all about democracy and all these good things.
Insurrection, you're kind of seeing them all, Chris.
Yeah. You'd think that'd be a bit more exciting, but
they
it's actually
cancelled
a
our
bit
right
dull,
to
these
vote.
insurrections.
I don't care about Georgescu or Lasconi. It's about the right to cast the ballot.
It's about principle.
That chick was pretty much the female equivalent of the guy with the horn, the buffalo head on.
Yeah.
He's gonna be walking around with a freaking the pedestal here in just a minute. I don't know.
And then after this, I got a follow-up interview on Newsmax with where are we? Yeah, so the first one we showed was on December 3, I think. Actually, bear with me. Have I got?
I'm just upset that I haven't seen one clip from Sky News.
Yeah, I think I'm lacking on that kind of content.
To the south, just like Donald Trump.
Have I got the same video twice? Bear with me.
Ukraine to the south, just like Donald Trump.
I'll come back to that one.
I feel like I'm in a time loop now. People need to start picking up on my anti-Australian jokes.
Not really. We can sort of just ignore them. For the most part, you know.
I am honestly surprised that Sky News is still in business. It's crazy how they are like the one voice of reason that I rarely hear, from in Australia. The Australian media has been kind of hijacked as well by the socialist left.
Our Sky News is a lot more right wing over here.
That's what I'm saying.
For the most part.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
I'm
yeah, I gotcha.
I'm surprised they're still in business. I mean, as far as like the rest of your news, I mean, it's as bad as our CNN and MSNBC. I mean, Australia, the perception, what I will say, the perception that is projected from Australia is that most of you guys or what we see is pretty far left.
Yeah.
I know that's not true. I know there's like at least 4 people that think like you do, and they're on Sky News.
Yeah. Well, who knows? We might pick up another 1 or 2 if any Australians are watching. Might convince them. Yeah, I can't find exactly the. I'll just share my screen. Thought I had it all organised. I had Newsmax 1 and Newsmax 2, but it turns out they're both Newsmax 1. You know,
Amy, there's nothing funnier than the truth.
Bear with me. There we go. It's waiting for you to share it. I realize I can share it myself too. I've got a few extra powers in this little thing.
That's right.
The shocking
So, yeah.
story of Calin Georgescu, who we featured here exclusively earlier this month.
Can you hear that?
Georgescu was the frontrunner in the 2024 Romanian presidential election, winning the first round in November, only to have those results annulled by the country's highest court just 5 days later. The claim by the court and the European Union was that Russia interfered somehow with the Romanian elections. No evidence was ever provided, but his win was taken away. Romania, a country of 20 million people, borders Ukraine to the south, couldn't possibly elect a guy who wants to end the war in Ukraine. It's a story that's a very real story and similar to the one we saw play out here in 2016 after Donald Trump's shocking win over Hillary Clinton. Trump's win shocked the world, but above all else, it shocked permanent Washington and it scared them. After that, our shadow government concocted a fake story that Donald Trump worked with the Russians to win the election, and Russiagate was born. It was total nonsense, but thankfully, after Trump's win in 2016, our own Supreme Court didn't overturn the election results here. But that's exactly what they did in Romania. And here, but hundreds to Romania reporting today on May 15th. Calin Georgescu, it's great to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Take us through what the latest is right now. The media here in the West are calling those protesters far-right extreme protesters. Where are we now and what happens next?
First of all, indeed, it's the same situation as you described in the beginning with the situation of President Trump in the United States. But beside is the fact are that thousands and thousands of people are on the street in order to call for their freedom, for their democracy, and in fact, for the second round. Because you know very well that the second round of elections was illegally and unconstitutionally cancelled. The system was stolen the vote of the people, and of course, the people, they are looking, of course, to have again their possibility to vote.
Yeah.
New elections, I want to be very clear, new elections are a fraud even bigger than already the stolen the vote for the second round.
Can I just ask you, do you expect the current president, who is illegitimate right now by every measure that we use, this election was stolen from you, do you expect the current president to resign if these protests continue?
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge protest about this cancel of the election. In fact, they cancel and they kill the democracy, they kill the free elections. And of course, the people, they need the democracy back. Strong.
But had a direct conversation with Donald Trump yet. But are you
Not
surprised at all by the support you've gotten since our first interview on January the 3rd from the international community?
Well, we are looking for the position very clear of President Trump after the official nomination of the 20. And of course, there are also some international position, exactly as you said. And honestly speaking, we are looking for strong international support because, again, it's a precedent which can happen in the whole world.
Would you like the support of Donald Trump?
Yes, absolutely. And moreover, you have to know that the Romanian people, they love President Trump, but not the government. And also his first mandate in 2016, correct, was also huge support by Romanian people, but not by the government. So it's absolutely clear that the position of Donald Trump, particularly, which he insists, President Trump, about peace, also looks very strange now related to the position of NATO, which looks that is under control of European Union in order to consist to impose the war in Ukraine before the official nomination of President in Washington.
So right now, the elections are going to be redone in early May, 4 months from now. That's what they want to happen.
We cannot accept. We cannot accept this.
So you're encouraging the people of Romania to continue to peacefully protest. Am I hearing you accurately?
Exactly, because
Yeah, so that's basically the highlights of that little interview. And I guess that brings us up to the Sean Ryan interview. But I've mainly seen just from the clips that we've seen, plus a little bit of this next one, but he seems pretty good. You know, I don't know all his policies or whatever. But yeah, seems like a decent kind of leader, and that's probably why the people came out on the streets to vote for him.
Yeah.
And he's probably too decent of a leader. That's why he's a threat to the system that wants to keep that Ukraine war going as long as they can. So if you get Trump taken over, and he wants the war to end, and this guy wants the war to end, and it might spread, and more people might want the war to end too. And that's a problem for the people that love war. So I think that's an angle about all this. But yeah, I might put on a bit of the Sean. I think it just got maybe 5 minutes worth of this interview that I saved. This interview with Sean Ryan probably has done a lot to bring this Romanian issue to American eyes.
What are the allegations against you?
All this stuff are related to his interference from Russia, which doesn't exist. I have no any relationship myself. And besides, there are zero proofs in general what they are talking about.
How do they think Russia interfered? What are they saying?
They are saying that they interfered, but they don't explain how. Important is they don't, even the former president, Iohannis, had an interview in December. And the journalist asked him exactly as you asked me now. And he said, we have no proofs. We have just, we suspect, we have suspicion.
So there was a very broad
statement, yeah.
No specifics.
No
just
specific.
believe that
Even
there was
in the Bucharest court, where we have, I mean, they have no evidence.
Did this stem from the Biden administration?
Yeah, I mean, what I want to say is from the beginning that the second round of elections was illegally and unconstitutionally cancelled. They stolen the vote of the people. New elections, or they are talking now, are fraud, even bigger, right? And the Romanian people are aware that was a coup d'etat order from abroad and implemented by Romanian oligarchs. They are alert about the word peace because they need war. And from early beginning, now and forever, I am the person for peace. I am the president of peace. And all my campaign was for peace. And I said, we don't need war. We need just peace. I shall stop in the first second any contribution from Romania for this war. And I wish to be very clear that in the first minute, when I shall be official president, the Soros network in Romania will be banned.
Soros will be banned from the first
because did a lot of damage for our country and for our people.
When it comes to the allegations against the Russian influence in the election process right now, I just want to ask you, man to man, have you had any contact with Vladimir Putin?
No, zero, absolutely zero.
Is anybody in your campaign that you're aware of?
Nobody. Important is particularly myself. I have no relationship, no contacts, no communication. Just, I know like you from the TV, this is all. But in any case, important is that nobody asked official them I mean, in a sense, those guys which they accuse us, I'm speaking about the Romanian side, they didn't ask the Russian embassy or official, let's say, conversation with them. What is going on here? No. And is zero evidence. So from my side, as I said, it's zero contact. From their side, no evidence. So everything which is going on today in the whole world is because is Russian influence.
Seems to be the commonality.
So exactly, it's like meat.
They did the same thing against President Trump, and that wound up being a hoax.
Exactly. So don't forget that in the allegation from Trump before, it's absolutely equal with what I received. It just they changed Trump with Georgescu. This is all. But in fact, they are the same. Behind the war, it's head of snake, which is a financial banking system. They need, as I said to you before, they are alert of the word peace because they need war.
So when it comes, I just want to ask my question: are you pro-Russia in the Ukraine war? Yes or no?
I am pro-Romanian.
You're pro-Romanian.
I don't care what is going on there.
You
It's
just
not my
want
business.
peace.
It's not my business. How you can have a war in the middle of Europe? Just think about that. It's a crazy time. I mean,
Yes, that interview, I haven't actually seen all of it. It goes on for about 2 hours. But he seems a very interesting guy.
Yeah, once we started talking about this, I've been meaning to sit down and watch that podcast, but I haven't made it there yet, but I will. I think it is important. I will say a couple of podcasts that I have watched over the last week or so. If you haven't watched the podcast with Mark Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan, I think that was a pretty enlightening podcast. Just like any other tech CEO, he wiggles out of a lot of things, but overall, I found the information that he was willing to share and his experience with the Biden administration pretty informative. And it's everything that we already knew that was going on. But it sounds like even within Facebook, they actually had some problems with it. I do think they obviously are pretty ideologically aligned with the Biden administration. But I do also think that they are, I think Facebook is hurting right now. I think a lot of people, because of what went on during COVID and because of the ongoing censorship that we're seeing in Facebook, I think they're declining. And he never said anything like that, but hopefully they do pull back some of the censorship. Again, I think that is very related to everything that we're talking about. And I think it's an important thing to watch and be informed on.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen that interview. That'd be a good one to watch. And yeah, I imagine, Facebook's probably hurting. It's sort of all the censorship and stuff, and X is doing so much better. So the few things I saw, Facebook seems to be changing to be more like X and trying to rebrand as the not censorship heavy media platform that they are.
Yeah, and I agree with this. Facebook is kind of fallen out of favor, but what hasn't is Instagram, and obviously they're linked and they're very, very similar with that. And I do think Instagram is a better platform than Facebook. And really, the thing with Facebook is it should be not only more like X, but if Mark Zuckerberg was smart, he would turn Facebook into something like YouTube as well, where you can actually put long form videos on there and have a library of videos. Like, I don't understand why they don't do that. X is kind of moving to that one platform that does it all, because they're now allowing long form. It's still weird. I've tried to upload some videos, but anyways, it's still got some work to do. But they're the only platform that's headed in that direction. A one platform that kind of does it all, and I like that.
Yeah, and I haven't really followed the TikTok ban too closely in America, but that's probably pretty relevant too, because it seems like in Romania they're quite worried about the ability of someone to get on TikTok and run a good campaign that's against the system. And I think a lot of the TikTok bans isn't so much Chinese spying or anything like this. It's probably just another somewhat unregulated social media site where people can get information that the mainstream media hasn't curated for them.
Yeah.
So I've just got a little video.
Real quick, I want to address this comment because you're right. I know Zuck and several other techs have donated money to the inauguration. I'd also like to see. I think these are more like anytime they're donating to an inauguration, it's like, oh, okay, this guy won. Now we need to give up some money to make, try to earn some favor on that. But I will say multiple times during that interview, Mark Zuckerberg said some very positive things about Donald Trump, shockingly so. Now, I don't know if that's him saying that, hey, he's because he's won the election. And look, I think Donald Trump is very easily influenced, right? If he was in there talking smack, I don't think Donald Trump would turn the government, direct the government to start attacking people. And he specifically talks about how the Biden administration was doing that. Because Joe Rogan was like saying, hey, he was explaining to Joe Rogan how they were under attack for not carrying water for the Biden administration and doing the censorship that they wanted them to. They were giving up, they were pushing back, and then suddenly all these agencies were investigating them. He's like, well, what were they kind of going after you for? And he's like, well, look, there's the regulation or whatever the investigation supposedly is, and then there's the actual underlying political issue that's causing that investigation to take place. And if Zuckerberg was out there talking smack about Donald Trump would hit back at him on Twitter, on Truth Social, in personally, right? But that's the difference between Trump and the Democrats. Like they'll continue to act nice to your face, but then they're going to go after you politically, legally through our justice system, and that's what we've seen happen many times in the last years. That any time, whether it was during the Obama administration or the Biden administration, we saw a clear weaponization of the justice system multiple times that we just didn't see under the Trump administration at all. And I think to some extent, a lot of us were disappointed. Like, hey, go after these guys, but in the name of, I don't know, political peace or trying to get political peace, or maybe they just thought this was right. That didn't happen, and it should have, because I wanted to see. I genuinely believe that Hillary should be in jail. She is a freaking murderer. Some of the things that the Clinton Foundation are guilty of, which she's personally guilty of. Look, I used to work for the Department of State under Hillary Clinton, and nothing good was said about that woman. And some of the dirty secrets that came out about her, just under the radar. I think she should have definitely been prosecuted. She definitely should have been prosecuted for the server issue as well. Anybody else that would have had a server in your home with classified information at the level that was classified what she had, she should have been in jail. No question about it.
And wasn't it the case that when she was ordered by a court to hang on to that information, I always have to double check because it always sounds not true, but didn't she actually physically destroy something with a hammer?
Her entire team's phones, they all had BlackBerries. At the time, that's what Department of State was issued was BlackBerries. They destroyed all of those. And then she used BleachBit, a software eraser that went through and completely wiped that server as well. And then when she was asked, "Oh, did you wipe the server?" "Oh, what do you mean, like with a cloth?"
With a cloth.
That's what she said. She should have just been shot right there for stupidity, like right in the face. Somebody just stood up and. So, anyways, she should be in jail, and that's not weaponization of the justice system. That's using the justice system for what it is, and that is to bring justice.
It'd be fulfilling a campaign promise to lock her up.
Well, that too.
Because I was a bit disappointed. As soon as he won, he sort of said no. Like, I think he had some kind of rally soon after winning.
Yeah,
and there was a lock her up chant, and he was like, "Yeah, we won." It was like just too nice. Here he is. He's supposed to be this divisive, like fascist tyrant or whatever, and he gets into power, and he's not. He's not, unfortunately. No, I mean, you know what I mean. He won't. He's not as tough as they made out with locking up Hillary and stuff like that.
His rhetoric is always at a higher frequency than his actions are, without a doubt. And I think we're even, again, I've told you this, we talked a little bit about Greenland and things like that. I don't think he's actually going to be going after Greenland. I think these are some things that are fun to talk about. I also think that once he gets in office, he's going to be so busy with domestic issues, he's not going to have a lot of time to give and to push for Greenland. But I hope, maybe not. Maybe he'll be able to get it done too. I'm fine with it. Let's make Greenland the 51st state. Let's make Canada the 52nd, and or just a U.S. territory. And then Australia, you're next.
Just stop there.
You better.
52 is fine.
You better.
They need 53.
Go ahead and order you some of that freaking red, white, and blue flags. Put up Old Glory. Practice the Pledge of Allegiance. You'll be good. Yeah, I do want to address this too. I do think I would not be surprised if Mark Zuckerberg ended up voting for Trump. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I do think he's still fairly left, but just from the discussion that he had with Joe Rogan, it is very clear either that or he's just doing a good job sucking up to the incoming administration, which is a possibility. But I do think even ideologically, it's pretty clear that Mark Zuckerberg has changed, and Joe Rogan was kind of teasing him about it. He's like, it's because you're doing jiu-jitsu, bro. And that maybe I think there's some truth to that. You get in the combat sports, you start doing a little, raising your testosterone, getting into actual competition, physical competition. There's been studies on that. People with higher testosterone tend to be a lot more conservative, which is why, I'm almost shocked that you are conservative, Chris. Look, I'm just joking. You exude testosterone with your Freemason checkerboard back there.
See, in between every episode now, I'm going to be setting up a little gym in the next room.
There you go.
So one day when you're least expecting it, I'm just going to rip off the shirt and be like, oh yeah, what about this?
Yeah, look at that.
Can't do it now. You'll have to take my word.
You want to wash your clothes? Here's my abs.
Yeah, give me about another 30 episodes or so, and I might be ready to bust that out. But, yeah.
Well, what else you got, Chris? We're getting close to about 5.
Yeah. So it's just a couple more little clips. So I guess there was an update. So I guess some court they're trying to appeal the cancelling of the election, and the court was supposed to make a decision, I think today or yesterday, but they've decided to postpone it for another day. So I have to wait till tomorrow for the results. But this was Georgescu leaving the court afterwards. He's speaking a different language, but he's basically saying, I can barely read it too. But he goes, there is no evidence. The evidence does not exist on the part of those who have abusively annulled the will of the people, and consequently what I can declare today is that human rights, the right to choose and to be elected, are guaranteed. They cannot be judged. When you judge human rights, it is as if you are violating any kind of creation, and I think that's the idea. What is happening today is an action against and a fight against God. It is a struggle against the right of the Romanian people and against, in particular, the most important elemental right in freedom, namely free vote. So basically the judge... Yeah, I can't really, it's hard for me to read the words, but that's basically the gist of it, So they've, he's obviously saying it's a violation against our right to vote, and they postponed the decision, but we were hoping that that court could undo the cancelling of the election, which would be an interesting turn of events. That might happen tomorrow, but maybe not, because I imagine they're trying to go through evidence of this thing. The prosecutor, or one side of it, would have to be, proving that the election should be cancelled, I suppose. I don't know how they could. So if there's any decency to this court, you'd think that tomorrow they might overturn the cancellation of the first round, which would be good, which would sort of undo all this election cancelling stuff. But we'll have to wait and see for tomorrow.
They're going to cancel the cancellation?
Yeah, hopefully. And then they'll try and cancel that. There'll be another appeal, I suppose.
Yeah, real quick while I'm thinking about
cancellation.
number one, make sure you go check out the description down below. I definitely put links to Chris's different social media sites. So you can go click that and follow him. If you're not following me already, well, you're just wrong. So make sure you go follow us on our other sites. We do some other things on, Instagram, X, and we have some fun with that. So make sure you're following us on those. I know like a lot of folks like me, kind of when X was becoming extremely censored, got away from it. And I was never really into X anyhow. I do think that if you're not on X, you should be. I think it is kind of it's going to be the platform that continues to grow the most. And I think we're still going to, have YouTube. YouTube's not going anywhere. And I hope Rumble continues to grow and develop out further. It's still a little wonky. It has some problems, but if you don't have an X account, you should get one. I think there's a lot of good information on there. And again, we're live streaming on X as well. And we're going to continue to do more content on X, but make sure you go check out the description. Make sure you go follow Chris. He does a lot of great things on X as well. And yeah, do that. The other thing I'm wondering, we have been kind of debating back and forth, and tonight we ended up having this at 8 p.m. just because the circumstances required it. Do you guys like 8 p.m.? I'm not saying that your answer is going to sway our decision one way or the other, but I am curious, is it better to have it at 8 p.m. or at 7 p.m. Eastern time? You guys let me know in the comments as well, and we will take that into consideration. So keep that in mind.
Just to spice things up a little bit, Georgescu also went on Alex Jones. So I've got a little video with Alex Jones. He's a bit more intense. Plus, it's got some intense music for this little clip.
Everything with Alex is intense.
Order died when he came back from Ukraine just a few months ago, former Army intelligence officer. He said 6 months ago on the show, look for Romania with NATO to be the detonator for full world war, because there's Romanian troops in Ukraine, and if they don't like the way the elections go or things happen, they can do a coup in Romania, and then Romania could claim that Russia was doing something to them and then implement the article of NATO, what is it, Article 5, so that NATO could try to directly come in. Because obviously Ukraine's not officially part of NATO yet, but Romania is. General Flynn has warned of.
Just briefly, so I mentioned Article 5 of the NATO convention, or whatever you call it. That's where, they're all, if one member gets attacked, every country has to join. So he's talking about the idea that Romania could say they've been attacked by Russia somehow. You do hear about sort of so-called Russian drones going across the border into Romania. That's where it gets a bit risky. Because if Romania says, hey, we've been attacked by Russia, technically America's supposed to go to war with, and the rest of the NATO countries are all supposed to go to war with Russia.
Yeah.
Which is not a good alliance to be in, I don't think. Because imagine you're automatically signed off for World War III if like Romania or one of these countries gets attacked. You're automatically signed up to go fight and die for that. Which is, probably bad.
And now this has happened. Are they trying to get full control of Romania to use it as the pretext to go to full war with Russia and bring NATO officially in?
I told you in the early beginning that EU was to control NATO before the official nomination of President Trump on the 20th. So this is very dangerous, because already looks that he is divided in two. Because simply the position of President Trump was absolutely very clear. We are looking for peace, was absolutely clear. And of course, they try to push more and more in order to control the war before the nomination of President Trump.
Sure, to escalate it out of his control.
Yeah. So, in the moment when they controlled via Rutte, Mr. Rutte, the chief of NATO, they try to impose their rules and to push how much is possible the third war in the region particularly via Romania. This is a more dangerous position which we have to face right now, because they have just slaves in this position of power. They have power holders. They are not leaders. In fact, there are very few leaders in the world right now. And in Romania, they have just puppets. And via these puppets, they want to control the war and to impose the war how fast is possible before the President Trump nomination on the 20th.
And I just have one more video clip. Another interview he did with Viva Frey. I haven't seen it, but I've just seen this clip. This is more of a puff piece kind of clip for Georgescu. He was given an icon by a young girl outside the court. It's just more of a whole election or whatever. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all the videos I got saved for Georgescu, the Romanian firebrand, potential leader. We'll have to see what happens there. We've got the court. Will they overturn the election? If not, how will the redone elections go? Will Georgescu be able to run? I'm not sure. If he can, I imagine they'll be doing a lot of propaganda to try and persuade the voters against him. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting case to keep an eye on.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think we need to pay attention to what's going on, because I do think that the playbook that has been used in multiple different aspects here in the United States in our elections is being used across the world. And again, the people that don't have good intentions for the average person out there, anyone outside of the elite, those are the ones that are pushing for these things. And I just think that we need to be vividly aware of what's going on so that we can all prepare for it, know what's going on, share that information, and all those other things. So I think this has been really good. Make sure that you all, Con, I know, like I said, I'm fine with any time as long as there's enough notice ahead of time for when the show starts. We are going to get on a hard schedule of Tuesdays or Mondays and Thursdays, right, Chris? Mondays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing Mondays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. We'll continue to do the Dangerous Liberty podcast Wednesdays at 7 p.m. I might change that to 8. There's many positive. I might continue to poll that a little bit. My only problem is I got so many advertisements at 7 p.m. Eastern time all throughout different videos that I've put out. So that'll be a little bit change up, but I don't know. I'll think about that. But again, 8 p.m. Mondays and Thursdays, but then we will also sometimes do, if there's an event that's taking place, we might just jump on a live stream and kind of cover it as it goes. So, again, we appreciate the support. Make sure you guys share this content. We appreciate that. Like, subscribe, all those good things. Hit the bell icon. Hit the bell icon. Con, this goes for you. And this comment right here. If you hit that bell icon, you got to select all. If you don't select all, you will not get notifications of when we put out content. Look, YouTube knows our channel kind of favors or is primarily a 2A channel. And look, they just don't send out notifications unless you select all. So, and also be aware and pay attention to if they try to unsubscribe you. We constantly have that happen as well. Well, what else, Chris?
Well, that's pretty much that on that. I did have a little clip on the TikTok ban. Might as well just play the first minute of this. I haven't seen it, but I imagine it's good.
Porque no.
Following today's oral arguments, the Supreme Court appears ready to uphold a ban on TikTok that is set to take effect in 9 days. The popular app is used by as many as 170 million users in the U.S. A bipartisan law orders TikTok to shut down in 9 days unless it finds a new owner that is not in China or the Supreme Court takes action.
To give you some background, lawmakers fear that through TikTok, China could acquire Americans' private data or could push propaganda that would sow discord. It's a risk that TikTok's lawyer acknowledged to the 9 justices this morning.
That they would use that information over time to develop spies, to turn people, to blackmail people who a generation from now will be working in the FBI or the CIA or in the State Department. Is that not a realistic assessment by Congress and the President of the risks here?
Well, Your Honor, I'm not disputing the risks. I certainly acknowledge the risk, but I think there are lots of reasons, not just the one I just gave, but there are lots of reasons why that risk still can't justify the law.
Let's get the latest on what happened today.
Yeah, let's not. We got what we need. Don't need these people to explain it for us.
Freedom is dangerous. Liberty is dangerous.
Yeah, I don't buy their excuse at all that, it's because of the Chinese. I mean, I'm sure that's a concern, but I generally think TikTok is just, they're worried about too much information being on there. And I think there's a lot of overlap with what's happening in Romania. They don't like TikTok because could promote an anti-establishment candidate.
I mean, the real problem is that we have no privacy when it comes to any of these platforms. Facebook is scrubbing all our data. YouTube is scrubbing all our data. And that's where the real problem lies, is that shouldn't be allowed. They shouldn't, these platforms don't need our locations, don't need all the information that they have. They shouldn't be able to continually change these user agreements where they continue to, incrementally add things in there that end up compromising your privacy and security. And of course, we're not going to read through these 10-page freaking user agreements where they sneak in all this stuff. I mean, it's just it's very it's just sneaky the way that they do things. So that I think is the greater issue. TikTok isn't the issue. It's the way that all these tech companies are doing business and how they are capturing the data that they are from us individually.
Yeah, and it'll be funny too if they do ban TikTok, that in the land of the free there'll be no TikTok, but I'll still have it here in Australia. On some streams, I might sort of like break the law and show you a bit of TikTok.
That'll change once we annex you. So again,
yeah, as soon as you take over Australia, then we'll lose TikTok, I suppose.
Yeah,
it comes with it. That's part of the American dream now. The American package.
All right, folks. Well, I think that's going to call it. We're going to call it a night right there. Look, yes. I'll be flying to Vegas tomorrow. We'll be putting out a lot of content. Hang tight. I definitely want to try. Look, here's the thing. I gave Chris access to a lot of stuff so that if for some reason I'm just busy on Tuesday and I can't be here, Chris is 100% responsible for whether or not we have a live stream. It's completely up to him. So he can make that happen. And then, so Tuesday and Thursday, I'll definitely be doing some live streams from Vegas for sure. I definitely want to get, there's a few people I have on my list I want to get together, and we'll do some hotel room podcasts. Yeah, it's going to be a good time. So anyways, until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.